Incredible. Oh, and down goes Gamboa. Whoop, there it is.
With a huge highlight tonight.
What up, brawlers? Welcome back to Throwin Hands. It's me, it's Toby. Toby, it's almost Halloween. You got your costumes together?
I don't, unfortunately, but I was thinking about doing Tobias Funke from Arrested Development because, I mean, hey, my name is Tobias. I would have to shave my head bald and keep the mustache and paint myself blue, but could be worth it. So,
I mean, you already kind of do annual or biannual shaving.
I do. Yeah, I don't shave much, so
Yeah.
I'm due for one.
I got my costumes all together. I got 3 of them. But the parts kind of intermingle. I only spent about, let me think, $30-40 on accessories, so not too bad. So
Yeah.
I got a party. I'm going out to the bars, of course. So what I'm doing is I'm going to the party as Walter White. That's why I'm growing out this mustache. I hate it. I don't like the mustache. Maybe I'll grow into it next week. But then I'm going home, taking off the bald cap, redoing my hair, and I'm going as a crossing guard.
Nice.
I got a stop sign off Amazon. It says slow on the back too. We're cooking with that. And then Saturday night, I'm gonna be Mr. Worldwide, Pitbull.
Let's go, man. You got 3 different options there.
I know, and a lot of them are so I got a suit coat at Goodwill for like $5. So we're cooking with kerosene. But you know what else is cooking with kerosene? This fight card coming up, man. Oof.
I agree with that.
Oof. There it is. Resume share. Come on, let me shit. Why aren't you sharing? Technical difficulties, guys. Sorry if you're watching on YouTube. I'm not editing this out, okay? There we go. Yay, we're here. Makhachev versus Volkanovski, too.
Man, I gotta say the artwork is not really doing it for me.
The artwork is never great.
I think there are some that are good, but they really, man, Volk, they made him look like a crayon or something. I don't know.
Crayon?
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's kind of, they just messed him up a little bit. The greatest fight poster I've ever seen. I actually have the poster hanging on my wall. Is UFC 181, which was Robbie Lawler and Johnny Hendricks, their second fight. And it's the beautiful, I mean, absolutely beautiful fight poster.
Yeah, I think
it's like a comic book scene, basically.
Definitely. The Jones versus Miocic one is okay.
Man, that's kind of trash.
They didn't put Prohaska and Pereira on the poster.
It seems to me that they just get some random person from like Fiverr or something, and they just give them like $50. They're like, hey, just put a little background and then put the fighters' faces. They're never too super extensive. They're pretty basic.
Very true. All right, so let's look at the prelims. Personally, the prelim I'm looking forward to the most is Daniel versus Muhammad Naimov. This is a fun fight, man. This is really fun. I'm surprised Nathaniel Wood isn't closer to the featured bout or like second up to the featured bout because, I mean, I think Nathaniel Wood has a bright future in this sport and Naimov, but I mean, beating Charles Jourdain, beating Andre Fili, beating Charles Rosa, but I understand the odds are pretty heavily in Nathaniel Wood's favor, but I don't think Naimov's anything to necessarily relax about.
Yeah, no, this should be a good fight. I figured the odds would be a little bit closer, to be honest, but I guess Naimov was kind of losing that last one, and then he just like slept Jamie Malarkey out of nowhere. But clearly, he carries big power. But Nathaniel Wood, very mobile guy, uses leg kicks well, uses pretty much all techniques very well. I was super impressed in his last couple fights. I thought he was a bit small going up to featherweight. This says their weight is 155, 156. I'm not sure that's correct. I mean, I think they're definitely featherweights, but I thought he was a pretty good sized bantamweight. He's only 5'6". Um, but then he moved up and he looked great. I mean, Rosa, definitely near the end of his career, but Charles Jourdain, he is always dangerous. Fantastic striker. I thought Jourdain was going to piece him up on the feet. Nathaniel Wood looked really good in that fight. Same with Andre Fili. I thought Fili was kind of going to piece him up. And we saw too in that fight, man, he got hurt like bad, really, really bad. And he has great recovery skills, super tough. I think Nathaniel Wood gets this done. I think it's going to be a little bit closer than maybe some people expect, but I do think Nathaniel Wood is a great, great prospect.
Indeed, he is. As much as I respect Naimov, I think Nathaniel Wood takes this by decision. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah, I think he'll win a decision. Nathaniel Wood isn't, he sort of a finisher, not really recently though.
Um, Abu Azaitar versus Cedric Dumas. Man, this guy had so much hype coming in, and he's just been kind of a dud, to be honest. Abu Azaitar, I think this is Atman Azaitar's brother, if I'm not mistaken. And he
The
hasn't
GOAT.
fought. Yeah, and he hasn't fought since I think the Stipe Miocic last fought. So see what goes down here. I'm not too high on Dumas. I think Azaitar demolishes him.
Yeah, I'm not really sure, honestly. I haven't seen much of a Zaitar fight. I know his last fight against Marc-Andre Barrault, didn't go his way. I think it was pretty competitive. I don't really remember that fight, to be honest, so I'm not going to speak on it too much, but I do remember Cedric West Dumas, if that's how you say it, I believe, and Josh Frim almost ripped a guy's head off, and that was pretty terrible. Not a good loss for SD there. Yeah, I'm not super high on either of these guys. I think that Dumas, he has a street fighting background, as he likes to say, and it kind of shows a little bit. I mean, he doesn't have the most refined skill set in there. He's a bit wild, but we did see in the Cody Brundage fight, he was able to win a decision, a really terrible, terrible fight that was, but he won clearly. And so he can go the distance, man. He's somewhat well-rounded, but well-rounded in the sense that, he's like okay everywhere. There's not any like glaring deficiency in his game, but there's also no real extremely great point of his game. So I think, kind of indifferent to this fight. I'll say a Zaitar.
Um, Muhammad Yahya versus Trevor Peek UFC debut. Don't know much about this guy, but we get to see Trevor Peek fight. I mean, it's not the prettiest thing, but it's always fun. So that's how I look at Trevor Peek.
Yeah, for sure. Trevor Peek is a super fun fighter. Yeah, same. I don't really know much about Muhammad Yahya. I've heard mixed things about him. I haven't really watched the tape. I've heard some people say like, "Oh man, this guy's incredible." I've heard some people say, he's a bit overrated. So I'm not sure. Trevor Peek, he brings it every time. We know that he's going to bite down the mouthpiece. He's going to go forward. I mean, skill wise, I would almost guarantee that Yahya is the more skilled fighter. I've never seen him fight, but he definitely has better technical skills than Trevor Peek, because that's not a high bar. But every Trevor Peek fight, you can never count him out because you're beating the life out of him, and somehow he just pulls it out from the depths. But we also did see too against Chepe Mariscal. Chepe was a guy who was willing to go in there and trade with him, go shot for shot, and he won that fight. So Trevor Peek can get beat in a firefight. So I'm not sure if Yahya is the type of guy to just go in there and go to war like that, but if he is able to, he can probably beat Trevor Peek.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. If Yahya is willing to stand in there and be technical, he has a good chance of being Peek. But he is from the UAE. He is home field advantage. I'm going Yahya on this one.
I wonder if he's one of those UAE Warriors guys. That's a good promotion over there, UAE Warriors.
It is. It's a very solid promotion. I think they just did a looking for a fight episode over there or something.
Nice.
All right. Tim Elliott versus Muhammad Mokaev. Tim Elliott, probably the closest person to beating Mighty Mouse outside of Cejudo. Um, but he hasn't been too great since. This is Bukhaev's biggest test. I'm trying to remember whom he fought last time. It was oh, Filio. And then he beat Malcolm Gordon Johnson. So clearly his biggest test. And Bukhaev can grapple, but Tim Elliott's a really good grappler too. And my thing is, how will Bukhaev handle adversity? Because I see him handling adversity in this fight. I understand he wasn't a knee bar. I forget whom he was fighting, but a guy who can challenge you for 15 minutes like Tim Elliott, that's going to be tough.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, it's crazy. Tim Elliott. It's actually really weird that title fight he had with DJ. He was on like a 3-fight losing streak, and then he won the Ultimate Fighter, and they were like, "Oh God, they needed someone at that point to fight DJ." And they're like, whoever wins this season of the Ultimate Fighter with the flyweights is going to fight DJ. And it ended up being Tim Elliott, and he did give him an extremely tough fight. So it is kind of crazy how he's just on this losing streak, fights arguably the greatest, pound for pound fighter of all time, one of them, and almost wins. But, that was a long time ago. But then again, I mean, Tim Elliott, he's won 4 of his last 5. This guy is looking pretty good. The only loss in his last 5 fights is to Mateus Nicolau. And even if you go back before that, he lost to Royval, he lost to Askar Askarov, he lost to Davison Figueiredo. Those are way, way better fighters. I mean, infinitely better than anybody that Muhammad Mokaev has faced. Now, Mokaev does have a really extensive background. It's not Sambo. What was it, like IMMAF or something that he was in?
Yeah, he won Amateur Worlds.
Yeah. So he's, got a long history in combat sports, but from what I've seen of him in the UFC, in the octagon, he has not overly impressed me. And I don't want that to be misconstrued. He's winning fights. He's finishing most of them. He looks pretty good. But I mean, if we just look through, Cody Durden, he knocked him out, he knocked him down, submitted him pretty quick. I think that would have been a very tough fight for him because we know how good Cody Durden is now. Charles Johnson, he defended a lot of takedowns in that fight. Charles Johnson defended like over half the takedowns in that fight. It was pretty, boring. I mean, Mokaev just kept taking him down, didn't really do much damage. Even in the Malcolm Gordon fight, really did not do any damage in that fight when he was on top, and he got the finish right near the end. Same thing with Filio. He didn't do a ton of damage. Pretty much got his knee destroyed. I mean, he did actually get his knee just completely obliterated and was tough enough to fight through and get that finish. So he's a tough guy. He's clearly got good wrestling skills. He's a good grappler, but he doesn't do much damage on top. He doesn't deal overly well with people who are extremely active on the bottom and who are going to be able to get up. And I think Tim Elliott is the type of guy who can get up from these takedowns. I think the only thing I'm worried about is maybe Tim's going to tire out a little bit. The pace will be too much for him. I'm not sure, but we'll see. I think this is clearly going to be the biggest test of Mokaev's career, and I'm not certain that he's just going to run through Tim Elliott. And I don't know what the odds are right now, but I'd imagine he's a pretty big favorite.
I do not see any odds. And honestly, like you said, I don't think Tim Elliott's favored. If you're a betting man, it's not a bad guy to put some money on, I don't think, especially as of late.
But it's not advice. Just to be clear, we're not telling you to do that. You could do that, though, if you wanted to.
In theory, you could. I do not promote gambling. Absolutely. It's not a smart thing to do, guys. All right. Said Nurmagomedov versus Muin Gafarov. I like Said Nurmagomedov, man. Solid boxing. He can sub you. A very well-rounded fighter. And it's not the most exciting fights, but, there's somewhat entertaining. Personally, I don't remember much about Gafarov. I've been busy with thesis stuff this week, so I haven't had any time to prepare. But he did lose to Castaneda, who is not a bad fighter. So, I don't know, man. I like Said in this one personally. The odds are almost a pick 'em, but I think Said can take this one.
Yeah, this is a tough one to call. Said is an interesting case because, you see the Nurmagomedov last name, but he does not fight in the same way that all those other Dagestani guys fight. He is much more of a striker. In fact, his wrestling, I would say, is not actually that good. I mean, his wrestling is just pretty average when you look at the rest of the division. Especially the fight before the last one that he had, not the Jonathan Martinez fight, but where he fought, it was like Saeed Yakub something, the guy who fights out of the same camp as Terrence McKinney. But he was kind of getting dominated in that fight. I mean, he got taken down multiple times,
Yeah.
and he was not looking great. Kakramanov, Saeed Yakub Kakramanov. And it looked like he was on his way to losing that fight, and he pulled off a guillotine. And, I'll give him credit for that. He got the sub, but that's not making me super confident to pick him in the future. Muin Gafarov, yeah, he's only got one official UFC fight. He fought on Contender Series too. I think he lost that one as well. But yeah, I mean, Sexy Mexi, John Castaneda, not a bad loss. That he's a good fighter. It was, fairly competitive. I don't know, man. I would definitely still favor Saeed in this fight. I haven't seen enough of Muin to say, he's looked good. Don't get me wrong, but I just haven't seen enough to say that he would beat a guy on the level of Saeed Nurmagomedov, someone who has a lot more fights in the UFC too. And I think arguably probably did win that last fight against Martinez. It was close, but I thought
Yeah,
he
it was
won that
close.
fight. So yeah, I'm gonna favor Saeed.
I will too. All right, man. I don't think you and I really have to talk about this one much. Ikram Alaskiara versus Warley Alves. They're feeding Warley Alves to an animal, um, caged up, probably wanting to. He's gonna fight Imamov, but that didn't happen. So Warley Alves decided to step in and move up a weight class. He hasn't fought in over 10 years. I got Ikram by brutal knockout in the first round. What do you have?
Yeah, probably the same thing. I just want to say those odds are for the last fight for sure. That there's no
Yes.
way. I think Ikram is like a minus 500 favorite at this point, like legitimately. Yeah, I think Ikram is probably going to destroy Warley Alves. Alves is pretty deep into his UFC career at this point. He's been fighting in the UFC since like 2014 or 2015. And he's looked okay. He's had a good run. He was on a great run actually, beat Colby at one point, subbed him. He's beaten a lot of good guys in the UFC, but all at welterweight. And like I said, he has not fought at middleweight in a decade. And I have no reason to believe that Wardley Alves, on a two-fight losing streak at welterweight, is going to move up to middleweight and take on a guy who just slept Phil Hawes in his last fight, a guy who's not even really a striker primarily, and who just slept someone like badly.
Yeah, it was brutal.
I'm not inclined to pick Wardley in this fight, so I'm thinking, yeah, Ikram gets it done probably in the first or second round.
I feel the same way. All right. Another Russia versus Brazil matchup. Magomed Ankalaev. Fun fact, in case you didn't know, Magomed is Mohammed in Russian. So, in case you didn't know, the more you know. Versus Johnny Walker, the biggest 205 of all time, probably. If Ankalaev gets his hands on Johnny Walker, this fight's not going to go in Johnny Walker's way whatsoever. But if Walker can manage to keep it on the feet, it could get real interesting. And Johnny Walker's been on an absolute tear lately. Kudalaba, Paul Craig, Anthony Smith. He got sent to the shadow round by Jamal Hill, but maybe that woke him up a little bit. I see, as much as I like Johnny Walker, solid dude, of course. He's a great guy, clearly. I think Ankalaev's going to ragdoll him. I'm not super confident in that, but that's the result I expect, I'd say. So I got Ankalaev by decision or submission.
Yeah, man, dude, I'm gonna go for it. I think Johnny Walker gets the win
Oh,
in this fight. I think Magomed Ankalaev, look, I think he's a great fighter. I think he's a tad bit overrated though, because he does not wrestle as much, at least from what I've seen. He does not wrestle as much as a lot of those other guys from that area, from that camp. And you look at his early fights in the UFC, he was finishing guys. Oh, he got a head kick. He hit this guy front kick to the face, knocked him out cold. Yeah, that's Dolce Lungiambula. And nothing against Dolce, not a super high level fighter. He knocked out Kutalaba. Okay. But then he fights Krylov. Then he fights Uzdemir. Then he fights Thiago Santos. And we see these fights are getting kind of close, The striking numbers are pretty even. He's not getting many takedowns. They're all going to decision. Just his recent fights, to me, the only guy he's finished recently is Anthony Smith, who pretty much anybody in the top 10 of light heavyweight should be able to finish. He just hasn't impressed me that much. And Johnny Walker, I've been kind of a Johnny Walker hater for quite a while. And, I thought he was kind of done. He lost 4 out of 5. He got knocked out brutally in a couple of those. And then he comes back, gets a submission against Kutalaba, finishes Paul Craig, beats up on Anthony Smith. I'm starting to come back around to Johnny Walker. Of course, I love him as a dude. He's a great guy, super funny. His size, I think, is going to be a big advantage for him. His range management. I think he's going to keep this at a good distance. And I think at range, I think it's about even. I mean, I know Kutalaba or Ankalaev has good range strikes as well. The front kick, the big left hand that he carries. But I think Johnny Walker, I think he's going to pull something weird off. I think he's going to land like a flying knee. I just have a feeling, man. I think he's going to land something odd. And don't get me wrong, I think Ankalaev is probably the better. I mean, he is the better fighter in this matchup. I just think that Johnny Walker is going to be able to make it his fight.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say you're going to be wrong there. It's going to be an interesting fight. Very interesting stylistic matchup. Alrighty. Kamaruddin Usman versus Hamzat Chimaev. Chimaev switching his representation to the United Arab Emirates. And our boy Kamaru still repping Nigeria. But Kamaru coming out on short notice. People had a lot to say about the video that came out yesterday about, but something popped. You could not hear what he said. Personally, I could not. Maybe it's the tinnitus acting up. But I don't think the odds reflect this fight too well. I think this fight's going to be closer than a lot of people think. Usman doesn't have to cut. Chimaev said, he's old. Well, he's moving up a weight class. And some people find new life moving up. And middleweights age a lot more gracefully than welterweights. And I think Usman has something to prove here. This is his last chance. Like, if he loses, I hate to say it, but he should probably retire if he loses. There's nothing. He won't. Fighters never do that, but he has something to prove here, coming in on short notice. He's a fighter's fighter, and this is the first time I'm probably ever rooting for Kamaru Usman, because Hamzat, I don't know, he kind of said, it wasn't my choice not to make weight. He still didn't make weight, buddy. I'm sorry. But where I see this fight getting interesting is the stand-up. Kamaru Usman only got taken down by Leon Edwards. I understand Hamzat Chimaev is probably going to be a different animal at middleweight, but I don't think he's going to ragdoll Usman like some people are saying. But will Usman be able to land that jab, keep him at range? That's really the question, and I think that's the key to this fight.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think, people are definitely underestimating Usman in this fight. You look at his takedown defense is 97% in the UFC. Now, I'm not sure how many takedown attempts have been, or I'm not sure how many takedowns have been attempted on Kamaru Usman, but however many they are, he's defended 97% of them. So that is pretty good. Yeah, I don't think Chimaev is just going to come in there, toss him around. I think the size is going to make a difference for sure. I think they're going to be about the same size, but I don't think Chimaev can just pick him up, walk around with him like he can with a guy like Li Jingliang, for example. So I think the size, it's going to be pretty even when it comes to that. In terms of power and striking ability, I mean, what have we seen from Chimaev that, like, his striking, it's good, but in the fight, we haven't really seen him strike in any fight. Li Jingliang, he just picked him up, walked him over, submitted him. Kevin Holland, the one fight that we saw him strike in was Gilbert Burns. That's the only fight we've ever seen him strike in. And he got hurt. He got dropped. I mean, that right hand that Gilbert Burns landed would have taken 95% of people's head. And it would have knocked him out cold. I mean, his head like turned fully around. It was one of the nastiest shots I've ever seen. And credit to him, he took that shot. But it's not like Kamaru Usman can't strike. It's not like he doesn't have power. He does have power, and he can strike fairly. He's not a great striker, but he's pretty good. So I think this fight's going to be close. With all that being said, I still do favor Chimaev in this fight. I think he's going to be definitely more explosive. And yeah, like with the video, I watched it a couple times. I couldn't really make out what he was saying. It's pretty hard. It sounds maybe like maybe he said the word popped. I'm not sure. I saw MMA Guru was like, he definitely said popped. He definitely said popped. It's
No, we're not going to talk about MMA Guru on this channel. We're levels above him.
No, I just thought it was pretty funny. It's like, I don't know, man. It's not that definitive. I heard it could have been a number of things, but God, MMA Guru, there's no one better at stretching out like a 3-minute video into a 15-minute video for that precious ad revenue. That guy just says the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah, he just likes to talk to hear himself talk, I think.
I think so too. But yes, if I had to make a pick, it would be Chimaev. But I think it's going to be close.
Yeah, it is going to be close. I got Usman by decision. All right, main event time. Let's go. Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski. I think Alexander Volkanovski surprised all of us in the last fight. I thought he won. You didn't, but we'll agree to disagree. And I'm not going to I'm not going to say you're wrong that Makhachev won, because if you think he's wrong, that's ridiculous. Yeah, but there's totally ways you could have scored Makhachev winning that fight. And Volk. There are people who don't know what they're talking about out there saying Volk looks out of shape in the pictures. I'm like, the lighting's just different. He looks the exact same. And also, just so you know, having a six-pack does not necessarily what I'm trying to find the word. Isn't necessarily evidence that you're in shape. Okay?
Yeah.
John Jones, he did have a six-pack, but he had to flex it. Going in that Cyril Gane fight, I'm sure he was in shape. It's John Jones. You don't need to have a six-pack to be in shape. But anyway, I think Volk, here's why I like Volk's chances in this fight. He has nothing to lose. If Islam loses to Volk coming in on 13 days notice, how embarrassing is that? Volk has nothing to lose. He's like you said, I'm coming off the couch, mate. But I think he has the striking advantage for sure. If he sticks out that jab, I think it's gonna be a long night for Islam Makhachev. And I don't think anybody outside of John Jones makes better in-fight adjustments than Alexander Volkanovski. So what I expect is he's gonna make all those adjustments from the first fight. He already went to camp for Islam. So he knows how to prepare for Islam, and I think Craig Jones coming in there helping him out is the best thing for his career. So here's how I see it going. I think Volk, like he said, he wants to get the knockout in the second round. I believe him. He's confident. I believe him. I'm going Volk second round TKO.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point about Volk and his physique. I think people definitely look too much into guys with six packs. I mean, Volk has never been a guy to have a six pack or anything like that, and we know how good he is. And keep in mind too, he used to weigh over 200 pounds, and so he cut down a lot of weight. And I think a lot of people don't realize when you acquire like body mass on you, that fat, a certain percentage of it will just never go away. Like it's just going to be there. So not saying that Volk was fat at any point, just that he had more body fat. And now that he's like 60 pounds lighter, of course, he's going to retain some of that. And that's kind of why you see in his physique, you can see it on the screen in that picture. He just has a little bit more fat than some other people do. But yeah, clearly he is in incredible shape. I think complete non-issue if anybody's bringing that up. Yeah. And if you look at the last fight, yeah, we disagree a little bit on the outcome, but it's close. I mean, you look, Volkanovski had the one knockdown of the fight. He landed more significant strikes. Islam had some more takedowns, more control time. Volk probably did more visible damage. I mean, it's very, very close. It's hard to say who definitively won that fight. One thing's for sure, though, is that Islam finished all of his opponents before that, and he could not finish Volk. We know how tough this guy is. On both sides, we know how tough they are. Islam only been finished once in his pro career, kind of caught him off guard knockout. And, he got finished, but it's been 8 years since that. So, man, I think this is going to be an incredible fight. I think this is actually going to be another 5-round war. I think that both guys, I know Volk is coming in on short notice, but if there's anybody who's in shape year round, legitimately ready to go in a fight any day of the year, I think it's a guy like Alexander Volkanovski. I think you make a good point. He's already had a camp for Islam. I know things are going to be different, but of course, after that fight, Volk, I know, is the type of guy who hates losing. And as soon as he loses to someone, he wants to go avenge that loss. So I know even when he's training for a year, even when he's just in the gym, not training for a fight specifically, he's figuring out ways to get better and beat Islam. That's in the back of his mind somewhere. So I think he's prepared for this fight. I think that it's tough for both guys. A lot of people talk about Volk stepping up, and of course, him stepping up on 12 days notice is incredible, but Islam is training for a completely different fighter as well. Oliveira is like 5 inches taller, 6 inches taller than Volkanovski. He has much more aggressive jiu-jitsu. He has a much different striking style. So it's a huge difference for both guys coming into this matchup. I would almost favor Volk too. It's really hard to say. I like Volk's chances in this fight. I can't really pinpoint exactly what it is, but I do think he's just going to make the necessary adjustments probably. And I think he might get it done.
Yeah, I can't wait for Saturday. I'm totally cool skipping the football game for this card.
Yeah, I am too. That's what I'm doing. I was thinking about getting tickets, and I was like, I'll just watch 294.
Yeah, 294 is the best option. All right. Hold on. I need to pull this up real quick. I'm not showing it on the screen. So Pat Miletich fought this past weekend, and he lost to Mike Jackson. But he was absolutely dominating Mike Jackson. And the only reason he lost to Mike Jackson is because he got exhausted. If you did not see the highlights of this fight, I suggest you go watch, because Pat Miletich was destroying this dude. It's kind of embarrassing. It was Pat Miletich's first professional MMA fight in 15 years. And Mike,
Who even sanctioned this fight? That's kind of shocking that they were able to get this fight done.
Caged Aggression in Iowa.
Oh my God. I'm honestly, I feel like Pat Miletich might be involved with Caged Aggression, because I know that his camp is based out of Davenport, Iowa. That's where all those guys, Miletich Fighting Systems, came from back in the day, Davenport, Iowa. So he might, I'm not saying he is, but I'm sure he has a pretty good relationship with an Iowa fight promotion, being Pat Miletich.
Yeah, I'm sure. But can you imagine being Mike Jackson, who I don't know if you know, but he and Jake Shields don't like each other. But I can't imagine being Mike Jackson and losing to somebody 16 years older than you. Now, it's not like a 38-year-old going up against an 18-year-old or whatever it is. That terrible math. But this Pat Miletich is our parents' age.
Yeah, he's literally 55 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, Pat Miletich has been fighting since almost the beginning of the UFC. Now, he wasn't in the UFC at that point, but he's been fighting MMA since pretty much, the early to mid 90s. So kind of tells you how long he's been doing this.
Yeah,
I think he was the first welterweight champion, or one of the first welterweight champions.
Yeah, I think he was the first welterweight champion. Yeah. All right, so some fight news from today. Neil Magny will fight Mike Malott on January 20th.
Jeez, dude, they're saying, Magny, get out of here.
Mike Malott is a scary man.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Yeah, he'll put your lights out. That's for sure.
I think it's a tough fight for both guys, but it's hard. Yeah, that's hard to say. Magny's always game. He's kind of been that prospect killer for a while, but it might be his time to wrap it up.
Yeah, honestly. Josh Emmett will fight Giga Chikadze at UFC 296 on December 16th. First off, 296 is becoming an absolute banger of a card. I graduate that day, so hopefully I'll have the chance to catch the card. But I hope Josh Emmett has recovered enough from that brutal beatdown he took from Ilya Taporia.
And Yair, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, that's just
Yair like battered his body as well. And I mean, what Taporia did to him was way worse too. So
yeah, that was probably the worst beatdown of the year, I think. Um,
yeah,
from what I can recall, I'm sure I'm missing something terrible and a bad ref, but
it's up there for sure.
I mean, Giga Chikadze is not exactly the easiest guy to come back to. I mean, he didn't who Giga fought Caceres. He looked pretty good against Caceres, especially taking a year and a half off.
Yeah.
That rust is gone. And
Caceres is a tough guy too. He's a really tricky guy to fight.
Weird striking, great jujitsu too.
Yeah.
But Yair has a lot fancier kicks, but I think Giga's kicks are the quickest, probably in the UFC, and they always hit the target. So Josh Emmett needs to cover up and not swang and bang because Giga's gonna find the target. That's a fun fight, man.
Oh yeah. After we talked about that the other day, I actually went back and watched Giga versus Calvin Kattar, and something that really shocked me watching that fight back was how close it was, and that may be shocking for some people to hear. Now, I'm not saying it was now. Clearly, Calvin Kattar won that fight, but the scorecards were like 50-45, 50-44. If you go back and look at the numbers in that fight, Giga Chikadze landed 128 significant strikes. Calvin Kattar landed 144. That's, those are pretty close numbers. Kattar, even after the fight, was like, DC was asking him, how you feel? And I think he was like a movie quote or something, but he was like, I feel like crap, but I got the way, something like that. But he got beat up in that fight. I mean, Giga, we've seen his toughness. We know that even when he's getting battered, his cardio holds up. We know that he's still powerful. I mean, he was winging some really, really powerful shots. Kattar, credit to him, just has a great chin, was able to take them. We saw that in the Holloway fight too with him. But I think that fight was not as much of a one-sided beatdown as I remember. I think a lot of those rounds were pretty close. I think Giga arguably won a couple of those rounds. My point being in all this is that I think that Giga is going to wreck Josh Emmett. And honestly, I think Josh Emmett, I don't want to say he's overrated. I mean, I think he's gotten some very, very good finishes in his career. And I think that's kind of moved him into a position that is a little bit higher than he should be at.
Yeah, excuse me. Oh, wow. I completely agree with what you said, Toby.
Like when he's not knocking people out cold, it's split decisions. It's like split decision with Kattar, close decision with Shane Burgos, close decision.
He didn't win that. He didn't win that Kattar fight. That was a robbery. Kattar won that fight.
Kattar won that fight pretty clearly. Like it was probably 4 rounds to 1, I would say. Calvin Kattar.
Yeah, it was clear. That was horrible. That's one of the few fights you can truly say that dude got robbed.
Yeah, that was not a super close fight, in my opinion. I thought Kattar won that pretty obviously, but
100% agree. All right. Former bantamweight champion Cody Garbrandt will take on Boom Kelleher. That's a fun fight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tremendous.
It's a banger. I like Brian Kelleher. He's always been a fun guy. I actually used to get Brian Kelleher mixed up with Josh Emmett when I didn't know much about fighting. It's like they're kind of similar,
I can kind of relate. So, we're going to wrap it up, man. You got anything else to add?
No, just looking forward to the fights this weekend. I think the main event is going to be one of the best fights that we'll ever see.
Yeah. Crazy stuff. All right. We'll see you guys later.